Please subscribe before watching the movie. Welcome back to Movies Recapped. Today we are going to explain a movie called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up the Sophie and Bee making out and their passionate kissing sets the mood. Wow, that's quite the way to start a movie. Then Sophie starts touching on her and telling her to hold it. Now if I get a pee, you better let me go. When Bee comes back, Sophie tells her that she loves her and they hop back in the car to be on their way down. As they get closer to their destination, Sophie gives Bee a little background on the people they're going to see. She tells her about how David was actually her preschool boyfriend, but this was all before she realized her taste in partners. Sophie builds Bee up since she feels like the people they're going to see are all awesome people, but Bee's phone starts to blow up. Sophie reassures her some more and they eventually get to a private house. It's more like a manor. It looks like the house that the board game Clue is based on. Bet there's a candlestick in the library and a poker in the sitting. After they park, Bee stays behind to touch up her makeup and motivate herself, but when she heads out to meet Sophie inside, she leaves the vanity mirror open with the light on. Meanwhile, David and Emma are enjoying their time in the pool and the others are gathered at the bottom of the pool with them. Suddenly they spot Sophie at the surface and they head up to greet her. Bee heads inside to look around, and she finds a table full of flashlights and batteries. Alice really starts to catch up with Sophie and it sounds like Sophie wasn't doing too well the last time they saw. Suddenly Bee comes out to meet the gang and she meets Emma, David, Jordan, Alice, and Greg. Jordan makes it a little clear that the gang isn't too happy about Sophie showing up, but Alice doesn't care. Alice grabs a champagne bottle and she convinces the others to pop it open to celebrate Sophie showing up. Bee shows everyone that she brought zucchini bread to share with everyone, and everyone toasts to the hurricane that's coming. Everyone except for Sophie and Bee, who are. Just then the wind and the rain start rolling in and they all start heading inside. David ends up walking in on Sophie and Bee, making out in one of the bedrooms, and he pulls Sophie aside to talk to her in private. Bee takes this time to venture around the house and Jordan finds her way to her by the stairs. Jordan warns Bee that she needs to be careful with Sophie. Meanwhile, David gets right to the point with Sophie and he asks her what she's doing there. Sophie tries to tell him that she missed him, but he calls her out on the downstairs. Bee heads to the kitchen to ask the other girls if they know the password to the Wi-Fi so she can call her mom. Afterwards, she tries to blend in with the other girls and she takes a drink from Alice to fit in. Ooh, that's gonna be a mistake. Now Sophie will be the only sober one and Bee doesn't really seem like the type to get really drunk and let loose very often. This whole situation is a recipe for disaster. Plus it's an 8/24 film, so this is gonna be. After getting to know each other, the girls ask Bee about her relationship with Sophie and they're surprised that they've been together for 6 weeks. This whole conversation Bee finds out that she's been eating weed, chocolate cake. Now it's a party Bee and everyone really start to dance and let loose as the sun goes down. Jordan watches Bee and Sophie get a little comfortable with each other, but she doesn't look too happy. Everybody but Sophie is messed up and some boundaries are really starting to get crossed. Jordan and Bee get really comfortable, but Jordan keeps throwing glances over to Sophie. Then leave it to Sophie to start the real movie. Here she starts everyone on the game of bodies, bodies, bodies. That game used to get really dark and violent, and that's why playing innocently in real life, that's not even a horror movie setting. While Sophie explains the rules, David and Alice snore a line in the kitchen and the real party starts after a tense game of slaps. Everyone turns the lights off and they go their separate ways. Bee uses her phone as a flashlight to crawl around the massive manor and the storm rages on outside. She eventually comes to Alice in the kitchen who takes off running, but when she comes across another person, she hides her light. The game's rather uneventful for quite some time, but soon someone yells, "Bodies, bodies, bodies." Greg is the first casualty and they start nominating who they think the killer. It's like a big game of Among Us who's acting sus. Eventually, Bee notices that Greg isn't moving in surprise, it's all an act. He's not dead yet. When bodies start actually dropping, it could literally be anyone. No one here actually likes anyone else. After a tense exchange between Greg and David, Greg decides that it might be time for him to go to bed so that the kids can play their games immediately. Alice lets it slip. She knows a little more than she should about David and Emma's sex life, and he gets mad at Emma about talking about the romance behind his. David makes Emma cry immediately and the girls vote David as the killer to kick him out of the game. He loses his temper and smashes a glass on the mantle before storming off. The rest of the girls gather gather to start the game over again, but this time the power really goes out. Some of them think that David shut off the power to the house, but some of the others believe that it's just the storm. Jordan decides to go flip the breaker and Bee heads to the bathroom down the hall as Bee makes her way to the bathroom. She watches as the storm rages outside and she gets startled by David when he slams against the window with blood running down the front of him. The other girls gather to try and help him, but it's too late for him. David makes perfect sense to be the first victim, though he's the most unlikable character, and if he didn't go now, we'd spend the entire movie focused on how we'd get rid. Now we don't have to worry about him. It also leaves the bigger question though. Who would hate him enough to kill him? Emma's too obvious. The girls try to get Sophie's car to go get help, but the car battery is dead thanks to Bee, leaving the mirror open. Apparently everyone else was dropped off by someone named Max, and he isn't back with the car yet. They all head inside and Jordan finds one of David's swords outside in the mud covered in his. Jordan decides that someone should go check on Greg to make sure he is really sleeping, but Alice doesn't seem to want to bother him. Jordan grabs a knife to make sure she stays safe and she questions Alice on how much she really knows about Greg. Eventually Alice wants Greg to come down to prove his innocence, but they suddenly realize that Emma has disappeared. The rest of the girls stick together to search for Emma now, and they think she might have had something to do with David's death since she was so upset with him. They end up going to Alice's room and they find that Greg isn't. Sophie spots a bunch of lines of coke on a table, but Jordan pulls their attention to Greg's personal bag. It's full of survivalist equipment that raises their suspicions, and there's a map that has the house circled on it. Jordan decides to take the bag with them and they go to search for Greg and Emma when they go to another room. Alice finds Emma laying under the covers, but she seems to be okay. After popping a Xanax, Emma joins the group and searching for Greg, and they find Greg laying down in the gym with his light therapy mask. When they go to get a closer look, he startles them. When he jerks away, that's the least of their worries. Greg really doesn't seem to have any idea what's been going on, but all these girls are waving knives and cleavers in his face. I'd get hostile if I woke up to that too. Greg really tries to keep his cool, but they really do make it hard for him. Everyone hopped straight to violence. It was only when Bee hit him in the back of the head with a kettlebell that he fell to the ground. Even if he isn't dead, he's definitely got brain damage now. Oh wait, he's getting back. Never mind, Bee double tapped him. He's done. Once it's all done, Alice tries to tell the others that he really didn't do it, but Jordan can't help but think that Greg made the most sense. No one seems to think that any one of them could have actually done it, so they just focus on how and why they should be getting out of the house. Sophie can't take it though, and she heads to the bedroom to do a line of coke before joining the rest of the crew in the living room. When Sophie gets back, Jordan can immediately spot that Sophie is using again, and Emma gets put on the spot for how she didn't deserve David. Meanwhile, Bee is changing and wiping her face, but I can't imagine that this will really matter in the end either. Downstairs, Sophie looks through David's board games until she finds his secret stash of drugs. After that, she finds Emma and she apologizes for all the drama she just caused. Sophie gives Emma the secret stash, and Emma runs off into the dark. Bee, on the other hand, notices Jordan searching for Sophie and she tries to hide in the shadows. Everybody seems to be wandering the house, searching for someone else, but when Alice hears a thud, she starts to worry that she might be. Eventually she slips on a wet floor and she looks up to find that she's fallen onto Emma's dead bodies. Jordan tries to come up with an excuse, but Alice points out that she had to be pushed down the stairs. The four of them decide to sit in a circle in the living room, and Alice noticed that someone's been playing the game this whole time. When she really thinks about it, she pieces together that the only one left that makes any sense is actually Bee, and she kicks her out of the house into the hurricane outside. Once Bee is locked out, she circles the house to try and find another way in, but Alice and Jordan walk all of the doors before she can reach. I don't know what category the storm is, but you definitely do not want to be stuck outside in a hurricane. Oddly enough, Bee goes to the car to get shelter, but the doors are locked. They were just in there and the battery was dead. How did the car lock itself? Bee ends up working the window down enough to let herself in the car, and she immediately goes through what supplies are packed in there. She eats some food, throws a dry jacket on, and she even finds a pair of underwear that belonged to Jordan in the back. Inside, Jordan leaves the group to investigate a sound, but little does she know that Bee is watching her from. She watches as Jordan grabs a gun from another room and she makes her way to the doggy door to sneak in. Once inside, Bee grabs a hammer and she makes her way into the other room. Bee tells them that Jordan has a gun, and Jordan empties her pockets to show that she doesn't actually have a gun. But it turns out that Jordan was the actual killer in the game. That means very little right now, but Jordan is the most intense of all these characters. If anyone was going to take this seriously, it would be Jordan calls B out for being a liar, and B comes clean on her backstory. It turns out that B is actually a sensitive, heartfelt person that didn't want to disappoint Sophie. Sophie holds B close and Jordan loses it. Jordan grabs the gun that she hid and she opens up about the real feelings the group has about Sophie. In turn, Sophie opens up about the kind of fake friends that all of them are to her, and Alice just tries to turn things around the entire. While Sophie tries to defend her ghosting behavior, Jordan and Alice point out that that's just how she is in an attempt to break the bond between B and Sophie. Jordan admits that Sophie slept with her before she came up to the house the day before, and now no one trusts anyone. These are the worst kind of friends, not to mention they're all involved with each other at one point or the other or at the same time. They really make you wonder if the interactions would be different if some of the other characters were alive instead. Whoa! Jordan shoots Alice in the leg when she can't stand her mouth. They are literally the worst friends in the world. The four of them scramble to get the gun away from each other, but in the process, Alice gets shot again. She's not getting up. This time though, the three survivors look around to each other and Jordan tells Sophie that she didn't actually do it. She quickly grabs the gun off the ground and she tells Sophie and B to stay back from her. She repeatedly tells them that she didn't actually kill anyone, but Sophie and B slowly creep towards Jordan until she corners herself upstairs. Eventually, B tries to wrestle the gun away from Jordan, but she ends up throwing her off the second story. Instead, while Jordan lies on the floor cut up, she tells B to check Sophie's text for proof of her infidelity, but Sophie grabs B to run away and tied in A. While there, B asks Sophie if she killed anyone there, but she swears that she didn't do any of it. The two of them sit quietly in the closet until B asks Sophie if what Jordan said is true. As intense as Jordan is, I definitely believe every word she says. I wouldn't trust Sophie with a kitten if I had one. B seems to agree too, because she bolts out of the closet when Sophie tries to. B bolts through the house until she finds a hiding spot and Sophie searches for her in the same room. She tries to tell her that they have to stay together, but when B doesn't answer, she goes off searching elsewhere. B eventually creeps back out and she makes her way past the other dead bodies. The sun comes up outside and she makes her way to the backyard and Sophie sneaks up behind her to hold her. Sophie tells her that she had something to tell and she tells her about how she gave Emma pills that caused her to trip, and during the hug B pulls out Jordan's gun and she tells Sophie that she wants her to check the phone for the text. Jordan mentions Sophie checks her phone across the back porch and the two of them fight for the phone. They end up rolling into the pool in the process, but when they get to the surface, they find that the phone isn't actually hers. B heads over to David's body and she uses his eyes to unlock the phone. Once she unlocks the phone, she finds that David really did kill himself trying to make a TikTok in the. Just then Max shows up and he asks the girls what happened while he was gone. Meanwhile, the electricity comes back on and the cell phones start working. B tells Max that she has reception and then the credits. I actually kind of had to laugh at the ending. Of course, David was dumb enough to have an accident like that, and it would be just like this paranoid society to assume that someone was up to get them all. A 24 gave us another banger of a movie. Give it a shot. Thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment your favorite movie I will narrate next. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.